just never knew how to tell you.
I would be able to talk about my life.
I ever loved a vodka.
I have two moms. You want me to say it out loud?
When I was in my mid-20s, I was living openly as a lesbian in New York City. It was 3,000 miles from my family's home in California, and it was the farthest away I could get without leaving the country altogether. I did keep in touch with my family, though, and one day my grandmother called, asking me to get in touch with Wynetta, a distant relative who had just moved to New York City from Texas to attend the seminary. It was my duty to make a small-town family girl feel welcome in the big concrete jungle of New York City. I imagined the worst. I met Wynetta for lunch, bringing along my lover, Linda. This was my territory, and I was determined the meeting would be on my terms. I was surprised to discover that even though Wynetta was a theology student from the reddest of the red states, she was actually pretty cool. We talked about our large, extended family, and I told her that as far as I knew, I was the only one who was gay. Wynetta said she remembered one eccentric old great-aunt that always came to family reunions with another woman. Her name was Mary French. Mary Bird French? My revered great-grandmother? My Nana, whom I knew and loved as a child? Did she actually have a female lover? Was Nana a lesbian? And with that, in a New York City diner on the Upper East Side, my second cousin, twice removed, gave me the gift of family. I always felt different as a child, like I didn't belong, that I had been born into a family of strangers. It was like I had been adopted by some well-meaning liberals who didn't really have a clue. Who were my real birth parents? RuPaul and Leah Delaria? We don't come into this world with a tag on a toe, proclaiming our identity. Our families notice that we have our mother's eyes and Uncle Charlie's ears, but no one ever says, she's got her great-grandmother's lesbian tendencies. Instead, on the outside, we try to conform. But if we are lucky, inside, we remain true to ourselves. It was time to come out to my mother. When I told her my truth, I felt free and elated. She felt loss and fear and cried for 3 days straight. My mom was ultimately accepting, though she did have questions. Are you sure? Is it somehow my fault? And I had questions of my own. Who was this mysterious woman who went to family reunions with my great-grandma, Nana? Were she and Nana lesbians? Mom hesitated before answering. Well, Nana was not, but everyone always said Betty was a lesbian. My head began to swim. I felt like I had in grade school when I suddenly realized my teacher didn't spend the night in the classroom. I was discovering that Nana was not just my great-grandmother. She had a whole life, one that perhaps my family and I knew very little about. What I did know was that Nana was born Mary Bird Ashton in 1892 in Indian Territory, outside the formal boundaries of the United States. The land was part of the Chickasaw Nation and would later become Oklahoma. Her family of 9 brothers and sisters scraped out a meager existence on the grassy plains, raising cattle and growing cotton. Some of her uncles married and settled down. Others, including Nana's family, pushed farther westward to homestead in Texas. At age 20, Nana gave birth to her only child, my grandmother, Gwendolyn Merle. And her husband promptly left his little family for parts unknown. But a few years later, she met and married Claude French. They made a home together in Denver, Colorado, before Claude was shipped off to Europe in World War I. When the war ended, he returned home, though like 36,000 other servicemen, he had contracted the disease of tuberculosis, from which he never fully recovered. As I understood it, after his death, Nana moved to California to live with my grandmother and help raise my mother and her younger siblings. My mom loved and adored Nana, and she was always a central figure in our matriarchal family clan. I was the first great-grandchild, and our family was proud to have 4 generations of women at my baptism: Nana, Grammy, my mother, and me. When I was 7 years old, Nana came to live with us. She had suffered a stroke and now used a cane or a wheelchair. It was in those years that I came to know and love Nana's fiercely independent spirit. I had just gotten my first camera, a Kodak Instamatic, obtained by sending in box tops from packages of Ritz crackers. The first photograph I took was a picture of my Nana, posing in our front yard with her cane tucked behind her back, too proud to be photographed relying on anything but herself. Eventually, Nana became so ill she had to live in a nursing home. She passed away in her sleep the day after our family Christmas gathering in 1977. So who was Betty? And was she Nana's lover, as my second cousin suspected? The official family history said nothing of these things. And the official family photo album, prominently displayed on the coffee table all these years, did not contain a single picture of anyone named Betty. Why hadn't I ever heard of Betty? Why weren't there any pictures of her? Tucked away in my grandmother's drawer was a stack of photo albums I had never seen. They were filled to the brim with pictures of Nana and Betty. As I paged through the album's photographs, every furtive gesture, every pose, seemed filled with a deeper meaning. A deeper longing, really, of my own. A longing to claim this relationship as a precursor to mine, to no longer be the only one, the odd girl out. Nana and Betty's relationship was like a thin, whispered thread of connection. My feelings were helped along by some surprising coincidences. Here was a 1946 souvenir photograph of Nana and Betty on a donkey cart in Tijuana, almost identical to one taken of Linda and me in Tijuana 50 years later. And like Linda and me, Nana and Betty were enthusiastic travelers. By studying the pictures and questioning my family, I began to piece together the history of Nana and Betty. They met in a trailer park in Tucson, Arizona in 1938. Nana and Claude had moved there because his doctors advised that the dry heat would improve his tuberculosis. Betty's family moved there for similar reasons, but it was her father that was ill. Betty's brothers attended school, but her parents kept Betty at home, content to have her learn little more than the domestic arts. She barely knew how to read or write, or how to manage money. This was not acceptable to Nana, who held the uncommon belief in those days that a woman had a right to be educated and independent. I was thrilled to learn that Nana was an early feminist. So Nana befriended Betty and began tutoring her on a regular basis. And after Claude died, Nana and Betty moved in together. World War II had broken out, and they both applied for jobs at a nearby Army Air Corps base. Nana worked in the secretarial pool, and Betty worked in the maintenance yard. Neither of them would ever rely on a man again. As the war ended, Nana and Betty were transferred to a base in Long Beach, California. They moved there together in 1946. From the look of things, they enjoyed themselves immensely during these years. They even began to send out Christmas cards together. And then a freak accident changed the trajectory of their lives. A phone call came in the middle of the night. Nana was informed that her daughter, my grandmother, had gotten up in the night and slipped on a rug, shattering her hip. The injury would require surgery and many months of recuperation. It was this incident, not Claude's death as I had previously believed, that resulted in Nana answering the call to move in with my mother's family. And Betty moved back to her hometown in Ohio. From that point on, Nana spent the school year living with and helping to care for my mother's family. But summers were Nana's own, and every summer she sought out Betty. One summer, according to a favorite family story, Nana planned to drive from California to Denver by herself. In those days, it was not proper for a woman to make the trip alone. That didn't stop Nana. She wore a man's hat, put her gun in the glove box, and drove all the way there by herself. But despite this familiar tale of a solitary summer road trip, I discovered that Nana rarely made the trip alone. Most summers, Betty would fly out to California, and the two of them would travel together. They toured national parks, visited friends, and always attended the annual family reunion. Then they made their way to Denver, where they lived together for the remainder of the summer months, before parting again in the fall. The more I learned, the more my fantasies about Nana and Betty seemed plausible. But the precise nature of their relationship remained elusive. No one really knew what they did together in their home or in private moments on the road. I felt I had come to a dead end. Then I considered an interesting fact. Betty was quite a bit younger than Nana. I wondered, could she still be alive today? I asked my mom if she thought Betty was still alive. She probably still lives in Ohio, Mom answered. I have her phone number if you want it. How could she not have mentioned this before? My family's investment in not knowing seemed almost as strong as my desire to find out. My heart was pounding in my chest when I made my first call to Betty. I introduced myself, and she seemed happy to reminisce about Nana. So we set a date to meet in person. When the day arrived, I grew more and more anxious as I drove the 5 hours to her small town outside of Cleveland. Betty greeted me at the door in masculine clothing and short-cropped hair, much like my own. It was immediately clear why everyone always said Betty was a lesbian. But what would Betty say? Her home revealed that Nana had been the love of her life. The rug on the wall was one they bought together in Arizona. The carefully preserved doll had been made by Nana, and an heirloom lamp had belonged to Nana's parents. We sat down to talk, and I had one question on my mind. I wanted to come right out and ask her, and I tried to make myself ask. But the closer I got, the more uncomfortable Betty became. I couldn't force her to confide in me, but I could try the indirect route.
Yeah, these girls, this is where she worked with.
Trailer party, Long Beach, California, 1949. So you like to have all-girl parties, huh?
I don't know, but some of her, see, these are all office people.
So what kind of things did you do down in Long Beach? Did you go to clubs and bars down there? No?
We didn't do that. We never did too much of that. And beer we're bringing home. This is her, all her relatives and cousins.
And there's you behind her? So it seems like you met most of the family, huh?
Yeah.
You were a regular member of the family, weren't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. And that was all I got. It wasn't safe to come out for most of Betty's lifetime, so I understand why she felt the need to hold on to her secrecy. I can't say for certain whether Nana and Betty were lovers, but I do believe, at the very least, that Nana's best friend was a lesbian. At a time when homosexuals were being locked up in mental institutions, arrested and demonized by McCarthy-era politics, this in itself was a revolutionary act. Nana, who was born outside the boundaries of the United States, lived much of her life crossing the boundaries society imposed. She believed in equal rights for women, and she was not afraid to show her love for Betty. Through my search, I discovered a strong and sustaining connection to Nana. I am carrying on her legacy. I am living my life unapologetically. I am demanding my civil rights. And after 18 years, I am still very much in love with Linda. No phone call in the middle of the night can separate us. I think Nana would be proud.